Again, this session will be recorded today and it is being recorded right now. So we thank, it will also then be posted on the pdactive.org YouTube channel in the next few days. And we thank our panelists for their willingness to support and record the session. I'm going to go ahead and in a minute here, I will plug that into the chat window. Just a moment, please. Oh, I've lost my notes, darn it.
That's okay. Do you want me to read a quote?
You read a quote while I go ahead and admit some other folks waiting. Go for it.
Sounds good. Words of wisdom from Jamie Attenberg of Craft Talk. My voice being irrelevant in a room of people does not matter to me as long as my voice is relevant on the page. And I believe it is relevant. Why? Because I work, I read, I think, I listen to my peers, I contemplate my intentions, and I try to write from the truest places inside me. I practice this craft over and over again. For all these reasons, I want to be worth reading, but I can't make anyone read it. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to do this anyway. The minor note in a sea of voices, who cares? You can always sing. If you can't write, just sing it out. When you hear a voice telling you that you're not important coming from within, play with it, interrogate it, argue with it, invite it to tea. If it doesn't work, with all the reasons that your voice matters, write it in a letter, a notebook. Write it to your best writer friend. You get to control the argument and control your worth because you can always sing. That's Jamie Attenberg of Craft Talk.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you for that. And thanks for keeping us hung on there, Heather. So you'll meet Heather in 2 seconds. Let me finish up with a quick intro and then we'll move into the really good stuff here. So finally, PD Active depends on donations to bring programs like this to our members free of charge. And we remain grateful for your contributions. If you have not yet had a chance to make the suggested registration donation of about $10 or $15 to this roundtable, then we will paste the link to the donation page into the chat window right now, and that way you'll see how the chat window works if you're not familiar with it. Oops, wrong section. Hold on. This is fun, huh? Here we go. Okay, there's the donation link. Let's see. Okay, today's session is entitled Finding Your Voice with PD, and we are joined by 2 very qualified panelists to help us navigate this topic. And without further delay, let us introduce them to you. Heather Kennedy and Sharon Krischer. Heather is the founder of Kathleen Kiddo, an advocacy site offering resources and connection through social media. And now let me see if I can more quickly paste that link into our chat window. By the way, let me just point out for folks, since we're going to have quite a few folks in the view here, do you know how to change your view in case you're using gallery view? You can also use active speaker view because we're going to have so many folks participating in this that one page of thumbnails will not be enough and it will probably scroll. In fact, it already has scrolled to a second page. If you go to the small view button in the upper right-hand corner of your black screen with all the thumbnails in it, you should be able to select speaker, which means that the active speaker that's speaking at the moment will be the primary picture in your screen, and then the little thumbnails will be around that. I hope that makes sense. Anyhow, bouncing back and forth here. Sharon Krischer is an internet influencer. So if you've always wanted to meet an internet influencer, today's your chance. And she operates her own blog called Twitchy Woman, My Adventures with Parkinson's. You can read it at www.twitchywoman.com. And guess what I'm going to do with that link? There you go. There's much more to know about them, and I'm going to let them fill you in on the rest of their backgrounds and the things that they're doing in the world of finding your voice with PD. But welcome to you both, and thank you both for joining us today. So these intros hardly do your interesting work justice, so please do fill us in on more But Heather, let's start with you and then Sharon, and then we'll let folks unmute themselves and open it up for discussion and questions. And again, you can post your questions into the chat window and we will field them from there. Take it away. Unmute yourself if you're not yet, Heather.
Isn't it astonishing? Isn't it absolutely astonishing what is happening to our bodies? And we have such little control. I've taken so many medications today to be able to talk to you that I feel like I might be levitating. And we can all relate to that difference between the bradykinesia and the dyskinesia. You know, there's always that balance for many of us. And since I've had deep brain stimulation, which for those of you watching who aren't, you know, just up on the lingo, apparently they put these electrodes into your substantia nigra. And mine was the globus pallidus. And you have this little neat little device here. You get to control only the volume. So what happens is they implant a battery into your chest. I know I need to gain a little weight. Mine's popping out quite a bit. And they pull this cord down. And what happens is so cool. You can turn this up or down. But one will make your leg kick out one way, and one makes your, you know, your face might twitch. So if I seem a little odd, maybe it's because I am. But PD Active has been so good to me. I've learned so much. I've enjoyed so many workshops. I've had so many times when I've enjoyed their fitness examples, like all the different videos. Carol Fisher has led me to PD Active again and again whenever I am down and out. So I come to you a little off because I want you to know that we just have to keep showing up. And this is lesson number 1 about finding your voice. It's being astonished and carrying through with whatever is in the moment. So one of the facets of meditation that I do is enjoying putting my mind up on a screen. Whenever you have a few minutes, maybe just 10 minutes, it doesn't have to be this epic thing where you have robes and chimes and you cling things and you say ding and you make it all official. You can just sit, close your eyes, quietly focus on your breathing, and behind your eyelids, watch your mind on a screen. Just say to yourself, oh, thinking. And every time you have a thought, it will pass like a cloud. I've learned this from a number of teachers. This is not an original thought. But what I find so cool about this practice is that it's free, it's available to all at all times. And for me, it simply adds a little bit of a pause in there. At least that's the idea. Sometimes this works. But that pause helps us, before we react, to simply respond, because we're so astonished about what's happening to us that we might behave strangely, or we might behave not quite like ourselves, but we have to show up because life goes on. Kids are graduating, grandchildren are graduating, congratulations. And people are having birthdays and babies are being born. And on the other side of life, people are dying. We have to show up for everything. We can't just say, I have this condition, I'm going to check out. So when we talk about finding our voice, no matter what is happening, finding our voice does not necessarily mean the literal. If you've lost your ability to speak clearly and loudly, do not despair. Please, there are other ways we can communicate. When I mention singing, singing can be whispering, it could be humming, it could be a cappella, and it can also be especially falsetto in the upper range, which is what many of us are forced into, because although the voice might drop a bit and our range will get smaller in our speech and in our song, we can breathe deeper and lower and just keep working with the breath, because it's all about the breath. So back to the meditation part, I'm getting at a point here, I promise. Everything goes back to the breath. So what I'm going to ask you to do is one of those things, you know, I know it's a little contrived, but I just want everyone to take 5 deep breaths with me, because I really need to take some deep breaths. So at your own pace, just 5. Nice slow exhales and inhales if you can. So your shoulders melt down your back a little. Kind of move your neck around if you can. feel where you're sitting. As you're breathing, just feel where you're sitting. So the breath. When we take those deep breaths, we come back into the room. When we have a lot of pain in our body, our inclination might be to shoot out of the body, to leave the situation, to find something to distract us. For some of us, it might be alcohol. For some of us, it might be getting very busy, staring into screens, getting that dopamine, that serotonin hit. Isn't it nice to chase dopamine? It's so much fun. You feel alive. Your prefrontal cortex is stimulated. And for those of us who also have the comorbidity of ADD, that's really not comorbidity, or something like that, we need to stay focused with Parkinson's even more, because everything's going to be tugging at us. Much energy on simply things that most people don't have to work quite so hard at. That energy is all going toward extra digestion, the breath, and moving, and things that everyone else takes for granted. So we're already a little bit distracted by those things, because everyone is like, why do I seem to be having trouble concentrating? Is that a Parkinson's thing? Well, yes and no. I looked like Ash Wednesday before I came down here. I had this huge smear of mascara. I still can't get my eyebrows right. I can't even think, because I took so many meds to be able to talk to you today. Because before, as you know, on the other side was much like this. And I couldn't really talk. And I thought, this isn't going to be any fun, because I can't talk right now. And I just wanted to be able to find my voice with you. Now, I wouldn't recommend taking those extra meds. That's not what I'm getting at here. What I would say is that however you are in the moment, you owe no one any explanation. You can always take that breath and pause. If it's really uncomfortable, or if you're lonely in a crowd like I tend to be, maybe you can step out of the room, go to the bathroom, take those 5 breaths. Center yourself a little bit more. Go ahead and take that breath before you speak. I'm on a live radio show with the 2 mics, which you may know of. And on that live radio show, Mike and Mike often have a moment where they're having a little bit of trouble with their speech. There are things going on in people's vocal cords, as you might have noticed if you've ever taken a singing lesson. And if you put your hand on your neck right here, you can feel yourself. I want everyone to do this and hum, just hum. I know we all seem funny, but we're not in the same room, so it's okay. And if your spouse, your friend wants to know what you're doing, just say, I'm just humming. You feel that vibration. Now I want you to do it again, but put your hand right here underneath your chin. See how that kind of comes out a little bit? Now try to relax your tongue, and so it doesn't come out so much, and hum again. Smile and hum. Can you smile and hum? Can we walk and chew gum at the same time? The reason I'm making you do all these silly exercises is because I'm trying to say this finding your voice part is not so serious. The cool thing is everyone has their own unique voice, and everyone has something to contribute. And it doesn't have to be this formal thing where you like, I'm going to go meditate now. Om Shanti, and there's bells, and you sit and I'm going to light candles, and it's going to be the spiritual awakening. Absolutely not. It's the most frustrating thing ever. It's like Pema Chodron often says, you just sit down and relax and breathe, which is the hardest thing to do ever, right? Someone tells you to relax. Do you relax? And how often do we get that with Parkinson's? Oh, are you nervous? Yeah, I'm sure you have that effect on all the girls, right? We just have to find ways to humor ourselves through this, and then take that deep breath and say what you need to say. And if you're like me, you'll probably talk over people sometimes because of the ADD and some other reasons. So I have to learn to take that pause and let other people speak and gather themselves, arrange their tongue, take their deep breath and speak. So if you're with friends, just say, hey, I might be a little bit slower. It's not because I'm necessarily thinking still, although I may also be doing that. It's because I need to sort of arrange myself before I can speak to you. I need to take that moment. Can you offer me that? It's a nice thing to tell our family members, our spouses. So that's a more literal side of finding your voice. What I'm finding most helpful for me is the catharsis part of singing and writing. The reason I'm bunching them together is pretty simple. Whether or not you choose this as a tool or this as a tool does not matter. You have something to say. It's your story. You get to tell it. And if you don't want to tell your story or write your own memoir type stuff, don't. You can always listen to some characters. You can find other things to write about. I have a million things that I can write about, but never enough time. So you could follow Julia Cameron's morning notes, like The Artist's Way. Many people who are highly successful do that to empty out their mind in the morning. So if you really want to find your voice, I would recommend taking maybe 10 minutes. When you first wake up, you're still in that sort of hypnagogic state. You're not even really logical yet. Not that I'm ever really logical, but, and just write until you feel like stopping, maybe like 10 minutes or so. But just don't pick up your pen. Even if it comes out, I really want some coffee. Why didn't I get coffee first? Why am I writing? Yes, Julia Cameron's morning notes. Do that every morning. And then that way, the gobbledygook, the stuff that's kind of noise, is gone. Then take your walk or do what you got to do, because I know that in the morning is a sweet spot for some people. So don't sit when you're having your great physical stuff. You got to hit it when you can. You have to go to the gym when you are able. You have to make sure that you can move when you can. So you write your notes, you go do your stuff, make your breakfast, hang out with your peeps, go to work, whatever you have to do. Then get the real writing started. It might be at your break at work, or it might be at home, whatever your lifestyle is. Then start writing. And if you really want to know how to write, get as close to the truth as possible. The ruthlessly honest, shameful, awful, terrible, ugly truth. And start there. Not hard at all, right? Just kidding. You don't really have to start there. But that's the idea that you want to get to eventually, because nobody wants to read more platitudes and everything's going to be great and don't worry, be happy. And the shaming of the happy brigade. Don't get me wrong. We don't want to wallow in our, the ugly spots in our life, but you can write that out on the page and help get through it and feel it all. That's one way that you can feel it all. And here's a pro tip. So this gets me the next part of my little chat here. If you're going to write a story, don't just write it from your perspective. Write it from every character's perspective. Example, you're at a dinner with your family, your extended family, with your in-laws, cousins, aunts, uncles. Everyone's at the table. It's going great, right? Everything's great. So you're at this table, you're really trying hard to just relax and smile. You're having a hard time. You're arguing with your aunt. Your grandfather's getting into a political discussion with somebody. Everybody's, the children are, running around, the grandchildren are knocking things over. There's a lot going on. And for Parkinson's, how does everybody do when a lot is going on? So for you, there are 20 television sets on. You can't find the remote. You just want to turn them off. They're all on a different channel. It might feel like that, right? Now write it from your aunt's perspective, the person whom you are arguing with across the table. So you're talking to your aunt, and your aunt is saying something that you can't even hear because of all this commotion. And finally, you just say, shut up. You slam your drink down, you smash the glass all over. Now write it from everybody's perspective. I know you're never going to do that, right? You guys are totally cool. You're totally cool. I've never done anything like that. So you're chilling now. Okay, so you calm down. Now, what would your aunt be noticing? What would the children running around be noticing? In other words, the author, which you get to be the author of your own voice, gets to tell what everybody is feeling and doing, because you're not missing anything, right? Isn't that what you're paid the big money to do? You're noticing everything. Now, next, step into sensory details. What does it feel like? What does it smell like in there? What does it feel like to be in your aunt's body? Imagine her hands are swollen. Maybe she's got some arthritis. What does that feel like? Write about that, because you want to get the people who might be reading your stuff into the moment. So you want to make it visceral. And you can do that. You know why? Because you have Parkinson's. And when you have Parkinson's, you hurt everywhere, from head to toe, pretty much all the time. And you pretend you're well. Other people might say that you're faking being sick sometime. Or maybe there's something else, what's wrong with you, they'll say. And you don't want anything to be wrong. So you give it your best shot, best foot forward. If you want to write about that feeling, be as honest as possible about how you feel to start with before anybody even says anything. You're leaving your house. You had trouble tying your shoes. Maybe you had some incontinence or something. I got to get changed again. And now you're late. So you're shaking. Write about that. That's the part that I keep saying is sort of the cathartic part, because that's the mundane stuff that you might not say to other people. And it helps you get through it, helps you to clarify your feelings. And it reminds you, once again, to stay present and take that deep breath. Now, I'm talking to myself as much as I am speaking with you because I need to be reminded. So we can all do each other a thing. It's called touchstones. You just tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, how you doing? And they'll say, oh, well, my cousin's doing this and I'm going on a trip and I'm doing, no, right now. Right now. So you say now, it's not now anymore. But right now, how do you feel? You might say, oh, my stomach's kind of funny. And what is that feeling? Oh, hunger. I'm feeling impatient. I'm feeling restless. Right now, I'm feeling a little bit manic because I took so many meds to be able to talk to you. And again, we're always astonished. We don't have a tremendous amount of control. Then the next time you feel like you're not relevant, here's what I want to say. Sorry, excuse me, I'm having trouble swallowing. Oh yeah, it's my grand speech. Dish pads, paper towels, emery boards, toothbrushes. Oh wait, that's my list of things to do. That's the wrong one, sorry. Do you see what I'm saying? There is no speech. There is no answer. All you have to do is improv. Improvise everything. So morning notes, meditation, deep breath, hit it when you can, remember the humor, and use these central visceral details when you do write so that you can be the most expressive writer. And make sure that you play. Play is so important. PD Active has great ways to play. I mean, how many links do you have where there's something fun going on, like dance? There's some yoga. I mean, I have fun in yoga. At least I keep telling myself that. Sometimes we feel like there's an earthquake within. At least I do. I remember when my neighbor shared a wall with me in the Western Addition. How much time do we have now, Todd?
Well, we'll meet Sharon in a minute. Why don't you get to the end of your earthquake story and then we'll bounce back and forth, but let's get Sharon up in a minute.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to bounce back. Yeah, I'm such a hog. I thought I was giving the presentation all in one shot.
Like the spotlight, Heather.
Oh, goodness gracious. I can't wait to pass it off. Why do you think I'm leaving social media? I need to change my, intro. Anyway, I shared a wall with this guy and the wall would go like this all the time, like all night. EDM, electronic dance music. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh, yeah.
I was pregnant. So I waddled up to his door at like 40 minutes. And, you have to turn the music down. And this kid looked at me. He said, no, I don't. Slammed the door. He did this every once in a while, I would say, maybe like once a week, for months. Finally, I wrote the landlord a letter. He comes to my door and he said, did you send me this? He was my landlord. His mother had given him the building after we rented. So of course, the point is we can't control the earthquakes. We can put leather all over the world, or we can put a little strip of it in our own feet and learn how to deal, because there's always going to be this noise. There's always going to be coming at us. It's going to be something distracting us. So make that time to write, breathe, feel. And when that kid comes in with his EDM, don't blast him. He's suffering too. Just get out of there. Get out of there if you can, So back to you, Todd and Sharon. I'm so sorry that I just hogged this. I thought I'd give my speech all at once.
You planted a lot of good seeds there for folks to start to feed back on. So it was
I didn't think they wanted to hear about me. I was telling them stories,
Stories are good, Heather. We want to hear about you.
Okay, good.
Sharon, tell us how you've used your writing to find your voice. We know that that's been so central for you.
Well, one of the things Heather demonstrated was storytelling.
Right.
Storytelling is a great way to express yourself. But she also talked about going to voice music classes and things like that. I figured she was going to talk about that, and I was going to talk about storytelling, but I think I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. And I do have a few slides only to keep me on track. So do I have screen share? Yes.
Good for you. You should. Let me make sure you're allowed to. One participant can share at a time. Yeah, go ahead and try it. There you go. I think it's working.
Let's see if we can do
Slideshow.
normal. Oh, slideshow.
Yeah.
You think my shaking hand is going to cooperate?
Mine's not right now.
Okay. All
Good.
right. So this is me. I'm Sharon Krischer, otherwise known as Twitchy Woman. You can get your Twitchy Woman t-shirt, just ask me. But I have been involved in the Parkinson's world since 2015. I was diagnosed in 2009, so 12 years ago. And I didn't do anything for 5 years. Literally did nothing. I had my head in the sand. I went to my first Parkinson's event after 5 years after I was diagnosed. And it was a Fox Foundation, big, conglomerate, a big thing in Pasadena. I live in Beverly Hills. So I went to that and met a bunch, and I found out that the world wasn't as awful as I thought it was going to be. And I met a lot of people, and I found a rock steady boxing class to go to on the West Side. And that was the beginning of my getting involved. And I don't know how it is for all of you, but once you step into the Parkinson's world, the next step is deeper and deeper and deeper. You just keep diving in, eventually you've given up, you're engulfed by the whole thing. And that's pretty much what happened to me. I started my blog a few months after I started boxing class, after this Fox program, and my boxing class started, because I was getting calls from people asking me to speak to somebody who was newly diagnosed. I hadn't come public. Nobody was supposed to even know that I had Parkinson's. I hadn't told anybody, but they figured it out and they were calling me. And so I was meeting people for coffee, an hour here, an hour there, or on the telephone. And it's really hard on the phone to talk to somebody with Parkinson's, especially if there's a speech problem. So it was tough, but let's go on. I have a quote here, which I can only be part of because I have the way my screen is set up. Hold on.
Good. We can see it perfect,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah,
Great.
you must strive to find your own voice, because the longer you wait to begin, the less likely you are to find it at all. Okay? So that was from the late, great Robin Williams. And I waited a long time. That's all I can say. So there's two different ways to make yourself heard. One is working on your voice, right? We can take singing, we can take speech therapy, we can do all kinds of things for our voices. And the other thing is writing and speaking up for yourself and speaking up for others. And that's where my world has settled. But one of the things that I have been doing since I started my blog 6 years ago is I've gotten very involved in women in Parkinson's. And I went to a workshop put on by the Parkinson's Disease Foundation in 2015, where they invited women. You had to apply, and they took 25 women, and I was fortunate to be one of the 25, and I had women from all over the country. And we spent 3 days learning about Parkinson's disease, and then we were told to go home and do something in our community. So I came home, and I had women on my email list that lived in Los Angeles. And so I emailed them, and I said, let's get together. And 2 people showed up. But we decided, let's do this again. And the next time we had 12 people, and then we had 20 people. And soon we had what we called our non-Parkinson's, our non-support group, because we were going to boxing, we were going to do dance for Parkinson's, we were doing yoga, we were doing arts and crafts, we were doing everything but being a support group. Nobody wanted it to be a gripe group. And if you fast forward to March of last year, we all know what happened in March, and everything got shut down. So I said, well, let's take our group together and put them together on Zoom. So my first Zoom meeting in March 22nd, 2019, by the way, it was 5 years to the date after my first blog post, which was on March 22nd as well. We started a Sunday mornings with Twitchy Women. We had 9 women. We now have over 450 women worldwide who participate. And one of the reasons it's become successful during the pandemic is there are not a lot of outlets for people to say how they feel, to talk to other people with Parkinson's, because all of our classes have been canceled. We don't have the opportunity to go see people in person. So we've been very successful in that way. So we had Music Men's Minds come to speak to us before the holidays, and one of the women came up with a song, a song parody based on the name of my blog, which is called Twitchy Woman. And you all know the song Witchy Woman, right? Everybody knows the song. So let's just do the first two verses. We don't have to go past that, but you get the idea. And I can't sing, so you're going to have to sing along with me. Should we unmute everybody?
Let me do that. Hang on a second.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
You get to sing as loud as you want for 2 verses. We'll just go to the, So messy hair and fragile
lips, shakes through her fingertips, echo voices,
She's all restless, lying on the sleepless night. Twitchy woman, see
he puts up
Sound awesome.
left and right.
Okay, we're done.
Okay, so that's being recorded?
It's impossible to do this on Zoom, but it's fun. It's fun, right?
That was cute.
So,
Okay.
Alexa.
so
Nice.
Twitchy Woman, my husband's the king of nicknames, but this one was mine. I came up with this one. He says, no, he tried to take credit. I said, nope, this one was mine. It just fits. And I swear every week somebody emails me and says, wow, what a great name. But you know what? It says something. It's getting it out there. It's telling people who I am. Okay, I have my shirt, Twitchy Woman. They know who I am. In fact, when I went to, I was in Kyoto and Heather was in Kyoto for the World Parkinson's Congress, which was 2 years ago. Can you believe that? And she came up to me, Heather comes up to me, she says, Twitchy Woman! And it's like, we finally met each other, but we, and that's who people thought I was. I mean, I've become this other, Twitchy Woman is not me, it's just this other entity. But it's fun, putting some fun into the whole thing. And I try to keep my blog light as possible. It's not always, but you can't always gripe about things. You got to look at the better side of things. So where do you start with all of this? And I don't know what happened here, why that's doing that. Okay. What I was going to say was, so my point of view is going to be about telling your story. No, you don't have to tell your story as on a TED Talk, but aim for 10 minutes. That's it. You don't want to bore anybody any longer than that. And I don't know what happened here. It was supposed to be all on one. But everybody has a story to tell. Why? Because everybody's journey with Parkinson's is a little bit different. You have a unique story. You want to make it personal. Talk about when your symptoms started. How did you feel when you received your diagnosis? Did your doctor say, oh, come back in 3 months and not give you any information? Or did they say, do you have questions and spend a lot of time with you? How did it go? Be honest with yourself, and you will find that when you tell your story, when you write your story, you're going to learn a whole lot about yourself, a lot about your Parkinson's disease, and that's one. Let me just go on. All right, I'm all out of order here. I thought it was going to work. Okay, so I know what I did. Let me see something. I lost the slide. All right. Oh, no, I did. No, I did. I didn't. I got to go back here. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
See, and here I thought this was going to keep me honest. Slideshow. Okay, back to.
You can just use your arrow. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. So, somewhere I guess it was around the time that I had gone to this Fox event, for 5 years after my diagnosis. There was a psychologist at UCLA, where my doctor was, who I had been seeing for a while, and he said to me, I want you to write your narrative. And I'm like, well, why would I do that? He said, just do it. Now, I'm the person who when my husband went to law school, I said, I'm not going to law school because I don't like to write. And I said to him, I don't like to write, you know, but this is, remember how the process of writing was when we were in college? You wrote it out longhand, right? Then you typed it in. You know, you typed it and you had to retype it if you made a mistake. Anyway, that was then. Now is, oh, I'm on my computer. I can move this, I can move that. Bingo, I've got my, you know, everything's done. Had I gone to law school 20 years later, my life would have been very different. But I didn't go to law school because I hated to write. And I actually have a degree in speech pathology, and I'm master's in audiology. But I haven't done that in years and years and years. I got into calligraphy. Calligraphy is another story. Calligraphy means you can write beautifully, right? I could write beautifully. Put a pen, regular pen in my hand, couldn't write. Micrographia, right? You know, one of the first signs of Parkinson's before anything else could be bad handwriting. My handwriting was getting worse and worse. But put that calligraphy pen in my hand and my brain shifted and I could do the artwork. It's a totally different process. So that was a different way to make my voice heard, was through my artwork. Okay. So let me talk to you a little bit about writing your story. I think I'm a firm believer that everybody should write their story because it gives you the tools to talk to other people about your journey with Parkinson's. Somebody says to you, well, why are you doing this? Well, here, let me tell you what led up to that, you know, or if you were going to meet with a congressman, let's say you're going to go with a group and go lobby. Well, why, you know, they want to hear your story. Why should they give more money to NIH for therapy or whatever, you know, whatever it is that you're asking for? You want to have your story ready to talk to them. So let's just talk about real quickly how to write your narrative. And I do it from one point of view. I actually did it as stream of consciousness, and I came back and cleaned it up. So some tips that I can give you are that just start writing. Write as long as you feel like it. As Heather said, just keep going and going and going. You know, you don't have to break for sentences. You just write. You can come back and edit later. Editing is, you know, that's later. You don't have to worry about it now. So I did that. And once I started, I couldn't stop. 3,100 words later, and I was finished just for a little while. Now, 3,100 words is a lot of words. An average blog post is 500. So it's 6 times as long as my average blog post, which usually has other stuff in it. So to fill up the space. I wrote stream of consciousness and eventually went back and organized my thoughts, and the narrative started to make sense. I mean, you got to try and figure out how this all fits together. And it also helps to put things into perspective for you.
Because our private investigators can capture it on video.
I can't. Somebody ask me a question? Was somebody asking?
Sharon,
At least it wasn't Jeffrey Toobin.
Sharon, unmute yourself. I muted everybody except for you and me. Just unmute yourself.
There we go.
There
Okay,
you go.
now you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So, yeah, I got to go back to where I was. Okay, so you can organize your thoughts once you started writing, and it's not in any order. You can move things around. Like I said, my handwriting is terrible. I can't sit and write longhand anymore. I work on the computer as long as my hand is working. And then I'll take a rest and I'll come back. And one of the most important things you can do is separate what is real from what is not real. You know, we start thinking about, well, we did this, you know, you remembered this and this and this, but maybe that wasn't really what happened. You know, maybe that's where Heather's other points of view come in. Maybe you asked somebody. But writing down your thoughts can help separate the imagined from the real, especially if you're taking hallucinatory drugs. You know, some people, you know, those commercials that run in the early morning on TV about Parkinson's drugs and hallucination, they should get rid of those altogether, but that's another story. Anyway, I found it's very therapeutic to write your feelings down, to write write about your journey, write about your story. It's cathartic because this is the only way you're going to be able to express how you felt going through this whole process. And one of the things that happens after a diagnosis is we go through the 5 stages of grief. Just like, you know, you hear about the 5 stages. Shock, I have what? You know, and your doctor sends you home with a prescription and no information. Denial, not me, it must be a mistake, it's something else. Anger, it's just not fair. Fear, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be that person in a wheelchair in 2 weeks? You know, am I going to go downhill that fast? Acceptance, okay, now it's time to get on with my life. And you may go back and forth between these. And you'll find that as you're writing your narrative, that you've been going through back and forth through these different stages. It's not necessarily, you know, hierarchical. It is what it is. So, but start your narrative at the beginning. My narrative started with, I was writing and my hands, my foot started to shake. And I couldn't figure it out. And I'd do this to my hand and my foot would go shake, would go away. And it would come back a few weeks later. And the same thing, I'd be writing and my foot starts to shake. And, you know, so what were the first symptoms that you can think of? You know, where did it lead to and what took you to the doctor? And when it was confirmed, how did you feel? That's when the shock and the grief hit. But it's a very important part of your finding your voice through Parkinson's. And so many people I've talked to have found more than just, you know, they've found a whole new world has been opened up to them because of Parkinson's. And if you understand your story, you can share. There's nothing better than sharing with other people with Parkinson's. You know, when you go to a boxing class or you go to a dance class or yoga for Parkinson's, and you're with other people and you talk to them and you understand each other because you speak the same language. So that's part of finding your voice. We found this special voice that we call Parkinson's. And with Parkinson's, other people with Parkinson's, we can communicate. It's a whole different thing. We know what our symptoms, you know, you tell them you have internal tremors and they know what you're talking about. You tell your children and they're like, what? Is it an earthquake? Yeah, they don't know what it is you're talking about. So there's lots of ways that you can use this narrative to move forward in your life. And I have found that it just has changed my life. It led me to write the blog. And now that I've started writing, I can't stop writing. And I'm not quite sure where that's going to go. So it's your story. You are unique. Use it. So what do? You can write your story, use your computer. If you can't type, you can do, you know, voice input, whatever it is that you need to do to write your story. Record it. You know, have you printed it? Do you want to do it an oral story? Do you want to do a podcast with somebody? Share your story with your doctor. That's really important because you can see how things have changed over the years. I've had this for 12 years and I can go back and look at what I wrote 7 years ago and say, oh, this is what's changed. You know, this is where I am now. Of course, this last year and a half, you know, all bets are off. Nobody feels as good as they did a year and a half ago because we've all been in la la land and, you know, wearing our daytime pajamas and our nighttime pajamas and all that stuff that goes with it and never leaving the house. And use the relevant parts of your narrative to advocate for yourself and for others with TD. And this is where we can all chip in. There are ways you can educate your friends and family about it. You know, you're going to do the Parkinson's Revolution on Saturday. You're going to ride a bike and you're asking people for money. well, why should they give you money? Well, you have your story. You can tell them your story. You know, they're not going to give you money otherwise. Let's face it. So at support groups, you know, you can use your story. As I said, when asking people to donate to a fundraiser, when you're writing your congressperson or advocating in the Capitol, it's very important to be able to use your words and be able to talk. Use your words, use your story in online groups if you're in a chat group or anywhere where you're asked to talk about it, talk about Parkinson's. So just a few useful things. The Parkinson's Foundation website has my PD story. If you are stuck and you don't know what to write, you know, you can read, there's a whole lot of stories posted on their website. And it's a great resource for learning how to tell people about living with Parkinson's. The Fox Foundation has Public Policy Matters, and this is where you can sign up to alert your congressperson about this thing and that thing, and you just fill in that's another way of making your voice heard. But that's a collective voice. We all need to go together on this. This is, you know, when they're asking for a bill for more money for whatever, for research, for whatever it may be. And on my blog site, I had one post called Writing Your Parkinson's Narrative, May 2017. You go to that, you know, I talk about all of this, about how to write your narrative. And I've written about it several times throughout the last 6 years. But, and I think that is it. I'm going to get rid of that. And I don't need to share my screen anymore. Am I still sharing?
You are, yeah. You want me to?
Yeah, all right, I got to get out of this somehow. Where is it? Oh, shoot. I can't find it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, stop shares. It's there, Todd. Hello.
There you go.
Yeah, I
Good
have,
job.
you know, I run these meetings on Sunday. We do this all the time, and I can never find the stuff.
Good.
So, yeah, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat or raise your hand or whatever it is, however we're going to do this. But I'm just a firm believer that if you know your story, if you can tell your story, it gives you a voice. You can find, you know, this is how you can find yourself. And so many of us are, as Heather said, you know, we all have ADD with Parkinson's. I don't think it's a comorbidity. I think it's just part and parcel of having Parkinson's. And we're spread out all over the place. So you need to be able to speak up, and speak up for yourself, speak up for your community, and speak up for globally as well. And one of the ways you can do that is by going to Barcelona next year for the World Parkinson's Congress. And there's lots of ways you can make yourself heard. So with that, thank you. And I'll turn it back to Todd.
Great, Sharon. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for the slides too. That seems like a pretty good starter kit for starting to draft our individual narratives. I'm curious, well, let's say just from a practical standpoint, I think it's important we point out that you mentioned micrographia, Sharon. I know not everybody in early stage Parkinson's suffers from micrographia as one of your motor symptoms. I definitely do. It's driven me crazy, and it's been one of the sources of my depression for a long time. So I wanted to remind people that Sharon's also mentioned a speak to type school. So, you know, if you don't have micrographia, then hallelujah, maybe you can journal your narrative and your story. If you do, then look up different tools like Dragon Speak. I know that I use on the Mac operating system the utility that comes built into the operating system, and it's actually, if you double tap the FN key, function key twice, I mean double tap it, you'll get a little microphone that pops up, and it is about 90+% accurate. So I do a lot of my emailing and my texting on iMessage on my Mac using this speak to type. It's beautiful. So I mean, these hands go crazy sometimes when, especially, and I'm on right now. So if I'm in an off state, I have a hard time communicating by keyboard. So there, just a little practical contribution. Please do pop your questions into the chat for the ladies, Heather and Sharon. Sharon, let's see, actually, Heather, I have one for you. I love the video that you did that's featured on your homepage. It's called A Mountain at My Gate, Living with Young Onset Parkinson's Disease. Folks, if you haven't seen Heather's homepage and the video there and the link to the whole video, I suggest you look at it. It's subtle and artistic, which really makes it emotional, but sans the whole hard sell we often feel from the big advocacy sites. Heather, how cathartic was it for you to make that piece? And I mean, how would you say that that contributes to your voice, or that allowed you to amplify your voice more through video?
There are two really special parts of that. Thank you for asking. I need to give credit where credit is due first, though. That is Anders, who is a filmmaker in Norway. And Anders has his own page that I'm happy to post. Anders is one of the best filmmakers I've ever worked with. He pushes you as his subject so far off into your own feelings that you cannot help but look into the camera and give him something real. He would instigate me, much like a little brother. He would poke at me and bug me until I was almost crying in a few of those scenes. That was very real. And then he had me sing like without warming up. I'm like all pitchy, but we weren't allowed to use the songs we wanted. We wanted to use John Prine. We wanted to use Dolly Parton. We wanted to use a lot of different. And so he's like, why don't you just sing them? They'll never recognize them that way. And I'm like, shut up. I mean, it was perfect. He really did agitate me to show Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And my father had just died. And another woman in that who's featured in there has died. She died at age 23. She's in the dance scene. She was a good friend of ours. And when Anders was here, what made that so special to make was to spend time with another Parkinson's person who was very symptomatically similar to me, and to watch us, get out our pills at the same time, about an hour or so before we eat. And we all did the same things. And I thought to myself, what a peculiar drama unfolding here. This handsome Norwegian man, his daughter was with him too, keeping her eye on him, making sure he didn't lose his camera and, go off and have, too many drinks at the local pub. I'm just kidding. Anders is not at all like that. He's a very disciplined man. But what I thought about the whole time he was here, what makes that particularly special is this. We are living in an ableist world where we don't necessarily compare our outsides to other people's outsides. We compare our insides to other people's outsides. So this is particularly why finding your voice is important. Communicating with loved ones through film, music, experimental techniques, improv is also worthy.
Yeah. Finding
your voice, Yeah.
I have a question that's come in. Are there other forms of writing problems other than micrographia? Anything else that either of you are aware of? And
Mine is not micrographia so much as it's just, I can't read my writing. It's just all over. It's too hard to get it to the camera. I was making notes. I can't read it. I write it's like just scribble, and I can't control it.
Nice.
Sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. And as I said, if I had the calligraphy pen, of course, it slows me down, and
That's
it
really
makes
interesting.
me more conscious. Now, there is a class called Combating Micrographia, which you can participate in. And if you go to my website, I actually have a link on it right now because we have a couple of classes. We have a class reserved, I think, starting next month for people involved in Twitchy Women. And if you want to join us, you're welcome to. The class is $300 for a seven-week course, and there includes all the materials. There's workbooks and stuff. But you do a lot of big exercises, different types of things to work on your handwriting. And so if that's something that you're interested in, just go to my website and you'll see it. It's on the Twitchy Sunday mornings page.
Okay, great.
Printing in block letters does help. Cursive is a nightmare.
I'm trying to type this into the chat and my typing is so awful. Okay. Yes, question, Herb, unmute yourself and chime in. Thank you.
Hi there. So I've had PD for 21 years so far.
21?
21.
Yeah.
And what I find is not only is my voice, well, I have a strong voice and a good background in acting, improv, all this stuff. But what I want to be able to do is express myself to my friends and my family, even in discussion. What I find is that they just sort of walk all over me. Because as soon as somebody starts talking, my impulse to talk
Turns off.
I can't, yeah, it's just, I stop instantly. And I notice other people with Parkinson's do this as well. And so I can't, so I need space. I need extra space. And the only way I'm going to get that is for people to really understand how my brain works. And that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
I don't wonder if you had any strategies for this.
Hallelujah, Herb. I hear you, because I've experienced the same thing.
Yeah, most people have.
I do too. And sometimes I raise my hand and say, can I talk?
Then I'll forget what I was going to say. That's the other thing.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. But at least that you got their attention for a second.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe they'll realize that they've all been talking over you. But you have to make yourself heard. And I did that on Friday night. We were with friends for dinner, and there were like 15 people there in the backyard, and I finally said, I have something to say, you know, because they weren't. I couldn't get a word in.
Yeah.
So you have to make the opportunity for yourself.
And I have to admit, I'm looking at you sheepishly because I've been on all sides of this.
You've been the interrupter.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sorry. But I'm learning because I'm having speech problems now. Surprise. I'm learning how to wait for others, just like I learned when I had to pound on the bathroom door before realizing someone was in there and just needed a little extra time. I never do that anymore either, but you know, we live and learn. And one person has said to me recently, everyone is always finishing my sentences because I'll pause and I'm struggling to find the word, or my mouth is not forming the word, or my voice is not coming up. And then they get really frustrated because they're like, wait. So when I'm on the radio show, I'm now slowly learning to let Mike have a moment. But it's taken a while. So if you can be patient with your loved ones and just say, hey, you know, you give me a little extra time to get out of the house.
Right.
Can we try to slow down our conversations in a world that's going increasingly fast?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done something similar with my wife, Herb. I've come to a little pact where pre-PD, she was the dominant conversationalist in social settings. And I would be okay with that, but then when I wanted to say something, I'd frequently get railroaded and run over. So when PD comes in and I'm having a harder time getting those to the surface, those thoughts, those ideas, she knows it now. We had a little agreement, years ago, and she will help me create space in social settings where if there's some dead air and she knows I'm still wanting to get an idea out, she'll somehow step in and make that space and allow for that buffer for me to pause and collect that last thought and spit it out. So
that's terrific. My husband watches out for me too when we're out, and it helps a lot.
Yeah.
We have a question from Kevin. What about executive function and its effect on writing, and also a footnote, which you can say he hates it when people finish his sentences. We all can relate to that.
I was going to try to finish your sentence, Sue, but I couldn't get it there quick enough.
That's perfect timing. I love it. Wow. Executive functioning and writing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
What about
I'm kidding.
executive function? Okay, Smarty.
I'm kidding. Like putting things in order, and instead of taking everything in at once, putting them in an order that matters, not the order they were received. Sorry about that. And I really don't know what they're doing.
I'm not quite sure either.
Kevin, if you want to reword that, go for it.
So,
No,
yeah.
the issue is that you talked about the physical attributes of voice control and writing, but there's also the mental aspects of forming the words in your brain and getting the thoughts transferred from the brain to the piece of paper or your recording. That's something that I don't think either speaker has addressed yet, is how do we sort that part in our brain out when we know we can't find words, or thoughts aren't coming out clearly, or as we start writing a sentence, we get sidetracked and not stay focused.
Okay. When I was talking about writing stream of consciousness, and then I come back and I look at what I've written, then I can sort things out. I just start writing, and the stuff comes out. And like you said, sometimes you're searching for a word. Since I find when I'm talking, I'm losing my words more than when I'm writing. But everybody functions differently.
See, I find that I like you compose as I'm writing on a computer. You know, and as I'm doing that, I'm correcting it, and I find myself taking excruciatingly long time to write a simple paragraph.
Just write the paragraph, don't correct it. Correct it later, come
Flow.
back to it. And it may make,
Yeah.
it will be easier to do it then than while you're writing.
I want to echo what Sharon's saying, Kevin, to cut you off, sorry. I want to echo this by saying, what I do is I draw a line in the space of the word I'm trying to think of and I move on. Just put a line there, right? It's just a draft. So what Sharon's saying is perfect. You can't stay right there because then you're like, oh, what's that word? And you get really, into it and you're kind of like just stuck. And then you lose your whole train, which might be going a lot faster than your physical body can keep up with. I always joke with my friends, like, I'll be like, yeah, I have these thoughts and feelings that I want to do, just like anything else. And I have ideas of how I want things to be. And I know what I'm trying to do with my hands. They're just not cooperating. So be patient with yourself and draw that little line in there.
Yeah, just let it flow and come back to it. Don't beat yourself up about it. It's honestly, you'll think when you come back to it, it'll go, oh, that's what I was looking for. It just falls into place.
Kevin, I'm going to chime in one more time for one of these speak to type tools, whichever one you want to land on. They're detailed enough that you can tell them to open parentheses, close parentheses, use punctuation, etc., quotation marks. So if I'm cruising along, I'm imagining myself now, ladies, starting my narrative tomorrow or later tonight, and I'm going to use one of these speak to type tools. And I'm just going to open a blank Word doc and I'm going to start speaking like Sharon said, just start with the truth and start with early on. What did it feel like to be diagnosed and all that awful window. And I'm going to, if I come up on a spot where I've got a gap, I'm going to say, open parentheses, lost track, close parentheses. And that means I can come back to that later and fill that back in later. But if you're not using one of these tools, I promise I won't mention it again today, but they're awesome.
Yeah, no, I've used both Dragon and the new MacBook Pro is good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, good. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah, it's a much better utility than past iOSs have offered. So I find it 90-something% accurate, whereas the former ones were 70 or less.
I do not recommend voice to text for starting or ending a relationship, though. Just pro text.
Yeah.
Good point.
Fortunately, I don't want to do either right now. I think I'm safe.
Didn't really go so well. And now it's in print.
What about bullet point form? Or just bang, bang, bang.
Why not?
You didn't put the top on the toothpaste. You're late to everything. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the breakup letter.
No.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
You know what? Whatever works best for you is what I tell people. It worked for me just start writing.
Mhm.
And whatever I wrote, I was going to come back to. You may be more organized than that, but bullet points are great. My husband loves bullet points. And it helps because then you can move everything around. That happened on one of my slides. The bullet points got shifted and, but whatever is the best method for you personally, because we're all different. We've all got a different story. The way we respond to all of this, to the world is different.
I'm a big fan of bullet points, John. I like to just blurt out ideas and then worry about connecting them.
Yeah. Connect them later.
Yeah.
May I respond to you too, John?
Mhm, sure.
Not a joke. If you're going to use bullet points, like I was joking about reading my list of things to do.
Yeah.
Go in with the procept. Has anyone ever heard of the proceptive process of writing?
No.
Where you write and basically, I'm going to shorten this up a bit. I'm going to, curtail this because we don't have time for the whole process, but you write and then you write the next write about what you heard, but what you didn't hear, but what you didn't actually write. It's hard, and it's easier to do with a partner because they can hear things that you didn't write and make those connections. But if you're alone doing it, what you did with those bullet points, why did you put that one there that didn't go with the rest of them? And you start to ask these questions, that's what's going to get you into the deeper writing. So that people can really get to know you and your very unique thoughts that you think that only you have. Maybe what you've never told anybody is what you write first. You can burn it. after reading it. And that's the thing about all this voice finding stuff. You don't have to give them your first, your second, or your third draft, whether it's bullet points or not.
You don't have to give anybody anything, I guess, do you?
Yeah.
No, I shared my initial narrative with the psychologist that I go to, and he's the only person who's ever seen it. My husband has not seen it. My kids have not seen it. He was the only one. Anybody that reads my story is on the Parkinson's Foundation site. It's totally different than what that first piece that I wrote was.
So only your psychologist.
Personally is your one.
So they know where you buried the body?
No, they have no.
She didn't put that part in.
Actually, I need to go back and see what I wrote because I don't remember. But you know, it can be a very personal thing that you don't have to share with anybody.
Good.
But it gives you insights into who you are.
Yeah. Thank you.
And this process, ladies, it can walk, crawl, or run, right? I mean, there's no rush, right?
Well, it's sort of like the patterns of grief that Sharon talked about, all the different, phases that we go through, and other people have mentioned so many times, because it's really what we're doing, and nobody can rush you through that. It's not like your dog dies and someone says, oh, you can get a new dog. No, there's no timeline for any of this. And you get to say what you want to say. And in whatever way you want. Don't worry about later, like, oh, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings, or I'll have to publish posthumously or at some point, don't worry about any of that. You're way ahead of yourself. Just write. Kind of like just put your mind up and watch it. Same process in a way. Although Hemingway says it's like slitting yourself open and bleeding onto the page. You don't have to start there. It doesn't have to be that heavy.
Let me ask a question here of the audience. Can I see a show of hands, and I will page through the thumbnails in front of me, who has actually started to write down the story, their Parkinson's story? Has anybody taken the time to start that process? Catherine's dad, it looks like. John, yes. Kevin, Mike,
Not a lot.
Michelle, not too many, but some. So does anybody want to speak to that process and tell us what that's been like?
Well, actually, I started a number of years ago and wrote a few things and then stopped.
Why did you
I actually haven't done it for a while.
What caused you to stop? Do you recall? It might be helpful for the rest of us.
Work was getting in the way.
Darn that work.
I was working at the time, so.
It's overrated.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyone else like to chime in on the process of documenting that story? Mike, tell us. Calling you out. Oh, he's on mute. Anybody else care to chime in?
Well, I mean, what happened with me is I was asked to do something on my DBS surgeries. And so that forced me in a way to go back to what started with my diagnosis and got me to the point of the DBS. I haven't really done anything since the DBS surgeries, which was like a year and a half ago. So
yeah, right. Nice to see you again, by the way. Catherine, I see you raising your hand. Would you like to chime in? No, am I wrong?
No, but Jerry can tell you about what he did. Right?
Tell us, Jerry.
First of all, I want to say hello to Heather. I'm Jerry Herdbees. I talked to you on the.
Hi.
Most of my career was spent as a trial attorney, and I litigated a lot of brain injury cases. So what I was most interested in was trying to figure out what was causing Parkinson's. So I won't bore you with the details, but I put it together in a fictional account where I put Parkinson's on trial in the Federal Court of Public Opinion. And that's all I'll tell you right now, because
it's going to be a bestseller.
Don't get me started.
Sounds great.
That's good. I like that. Thanks, Jerry.
It must be hard to organize, I imagine, a big writing. I mean, I used to be a composer. That doesn't fly anymore for me. It hasn't for 15 years.
Must be a big project to document the story, you mean, Herb?
Organize it. It's one thing to just blurt it out, and that's sort of what we're talking about, I think, with the process.
Yeah.
But then to organize it seems like, I'm not sure I'm up for that. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm not up for that.
Well, you know what?
You want
Write it out.
Try.
Come back in a month. Give yourself some time. And come back and you'll say, oh, I think you'll see some insights in what you wrote that will help you to sort it out. But you need to get some distance from it before you come back and actually think about editing. I think it'll help in your case.
Sharon brings up a really good point about the space between the two things. It's kind of like getting home from work. You need that little hallway, that little drive, that little moment where you just kind of go in between it. Because I used to publish, as you might be very surprised to hear this, but I used to publish without really editing and without really thinking about it and sitting on it. That doesn't go so well either, because it turns out we have really strong feelings about certain things. And this is why Sharon's advice is so important. Those feelings might change hour by hour, depending upon things like, medications. So give yourself that little bit of window, especially if it's a topic you feel super passionately about. And this is the problem with social media. And part of the reason I took myself off social media is because I was getting sort of reactive. I was getting sort of like, I'm going to respond to everything. It makes you kind of crazy. So
I find
that space.
Even writing my blog post, I will often write a post. Sometimes I'll post it the same day, which is rare. A lot of times I will wait a day or two. Sometimes I'll just keep coming back to it and say, it just isn't working, and I don't use it. And it, that works for me. Yesterday, whenever I posted the last one, I actually wrote it that morning and sent it out. It was just one that sometimes they come very quick and it all works. But it wasn't anything that was emotional. It was about exercise and the latest recommendations. So it was an easy one for me. But if I start getting into things that are more personal, it doesn't always fly. And you have to give yourself some distance to see, is this what other people want to hear from me?
Right.
I want to be heard. I'm having trouble, as I always do in groups, with speaking up.
Let's hear it, Michelle.
So I started doing my story. I've been a person who did journaling for decades, and it's how I work through everything that's important for me. But I can't write anymore. And when I dictate, it does I think it must be my British background, because it comes up with the most ridiculous words. Some of them quite rude. And I send text messages that really shouldn't be sent.
I've never done that.
That's part of your story, Michelle.
So the way I've been journaling now is basically because I had such a bad reaction and response to my deep brain stimulation that I've been analyzing it and talking about my emotions as to what my expectations were and what the doctor's expectations were. And so I've been continuing to journal it, looking at how I'm doing and how I'm progressing, and throwing in emotional stuff while I'm at it. And I got very negative, and then I just actively decided to get back to being my positive self, because it wasn't feeling good being negative. But I've been watching my progress all the way.
Good for you. Michelle, have you thought about trying, and maybe Heather and Sharon, you can speak to this. Have you thought about trying to keep an audio journal?
I do take notes on my cell phone.
Good. So that's a start. Your voice is beautiful, by the way. So
oh, thank you.
Don't worry about those. Don't worry about those pesky texts. But maybe try keeping a bit of a. I keep bringing up technology, but we know that the phones nowadays have a voice recorder or an audio recorder that you can keep short snippets of.
Yeah, I do that.
Good. Okay.
There's also
technology is our friend.
Exactly. I was just going to say there are so many apps. She's right. Technology is our friend. And make sure that you ask a lot of people. We have someone here named Mark who use it. He even said, what about a dictaphone?
Hmm.
Mark is, I'm just noticing, because I just finally got my notes to work. Mark is, he runs a group called Marked for Glory. And he has ataxia, as I understand it. Is that is that as simple enough to say as I mean, there's more to it than that. But he said, what about a dictaphone and get it transcribed?
Oh.
There's another idea. Like there's always ideas. So anyway, Mark has a lot of ideas too for me
Right.
of that.
Yeah.
Might be helpful.
Yeah. You were, yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a million ways to tackle any problem. We just always get these blinders on and we think, oh, well, this is the way everyone else is doing it, so I have to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Not so.
Right.
The best thing to do is just play and experiment and just have fun. Instead of looking at it as a problem, look at it as an opportunity. Maybe you learn some new way no one else knows.
Right. Well, technology and fun don't go together for me. But they cause great amusement for my 30-something kids.
I echo that. I feel like such a
I get so frustrated with technology.
Yeah.
Michelle, you might really enjoy this quote. The peculiar drama of my life has placed me in a world that by and large thinks it might be better if we didn't have so many problems, if we didn't exist in this particular way. We are feeling like an inconvenience, but my fight has been for accommodation, the world to me and me to the world. So we always have to find these adaptations and accommodations and make it work, because you have something to say. Like I can see it in your eyes. Like you need to say this thing. And so you'll find a way technologically to do it, even though technology wasn't your friend before.
Right. Well, I'm kind of like Sharon in that I've always hated writing, but I've always loved journaling, which is really weird. But writing about anything else apart from my life has not been easy for me. But I'm back to being positive, so things are good.
Had a girl, good. Say, Mark and Heather have so far mentioned improv. I know that, I don't know if I'll name drop here, but if anybody has seen any of the Robert Cochran movies that he did on his dad's adventure with Parkinson's, he's a big advocate for improv. So Heather, and then Mark too, if you'd like to chime in on why improv, how improv.
Actually, well, there's a lot, if you pay attention to a lot of actors and comedians, and even lots of athletes and stuff, they talk about getting into the state of flow, right? And it's this very Zen-like state, and it's hard. It's this place where you can access parts of yourself that maybe you don't even consciously know are there. But it's really simple to say, it's much harder to do, right? But the easiest way to access it is to just let it go. Whatever you have that's telling you, oh, I can't do this, or somebody's going to say that, or whatever, just let everything go and just do it. Like Sharon was saying about the stream of consciousness stuff, right? It's the same idea.
So drop any barricades and social
right,
stops
and drop any preconceived notions about what it's supposed to be, and let go of trying to control things. That's what trying to control stuff and expecting certain outcomes. Those are hindrances to what you're trying to create.
Yes, and that's one of the first things you learn in improv, right? Yes, and
sorry, Heather, I'm gonna interrupt you one last
I'm just kidding.
Okay. So there's, on that topic, I saw a movie and I've watched it like 3 times because it's so good. It's called Robin's Wish. It's about Robin Williams, and he's like the king of improv, right? And it has a lot of great stuff in there for anyone going through some brain issues and having trouble with people understanding them, all that stuff. And you know what he wrote in his journal that his wife pulled up after he died? One of the things he wrote was that he wants to help people get rid of fear, right? Because that's the number one reason why we don't create more stuff, is because we're afraid. We're afraid we can't do it. We're afraid other people are going to judge us. We're afraid of everything.
So when you're doing these improv sessions, Mark or Heather, is this by yourself in front of a mirror, or are you with kindred PD spirits or anybody, family?
I'll let Heather go next because I've been hugging. Yeah.
No, yes, and what I was thinking was, I don't practice improv. When you said in front of a mirror, do you mean like you practice improv? Isn't that kind of counterintuitive? I mean, all of life is improv. When Sharon was talking and we were talking about the presentation, and we kept losing our train of thought, each of us did a little bit, like I did a little bit, she did a little bit. I get distracted if I look down or try to find my cues. I do much better if I just stay in the moment for me when I'm interacting, because that space between what the presentation is and then the audience melts, and there's that cool thing that happens in between where you can get that live. Obviously now we're all looking into cameras, totally weird. Zoom is so strange, but I wasn't kidding when I wrote in the notes that Mark is one of my teachers. If there's anyone who knows how to stay in the moment, it is someone who has been challenged again and again, who has been misunderstood, who has had trouble communicating, who people don't give time to talk. And Mark, boom, brilliant. You're brilliant what you do with your work.
Thank you. So are you. And Heather and I have, whenever we do get together, which isn't too often, we have great conversations. And I have great conversations with some of I lead a support group on Zoom every week. And I mean, I'm seriously allergic to agendas, right? I know lots of people with support groups, they have agendas. We've got to do this. I don't like any of that, right? I just show up, and the best agenda for me is just to listen. Whenever I start to talk too much, like I am now, I have this voice in my head that says, okay, shut up. No one wants to hear what you have to say, right? And then
not true.
But it's usually that back and forth. So somebody says something, then I can respond to that and just keep going. You know, I was raised in the martial arts, and like everything is very similar. So in the martial arts, when you find yourself thinking about stuff, thinking about how to throw a punch or how to throw a kick, you're doing it wrong, because you're not supposed to think. You're supposed to just do, right?
Flow.
Didn't Yoda say that?
It's he might have. There is no try, there's only do, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's gonna be a lifelong journey. There's no easy answer. You just have to just keep practicing. That's all.
I have a question that came in from Catherine, and she's wondering if anybody has any experience with the following journal apps. So just opening up to the group: Day One for Mac and iOS users, Derium, Penzu, Momento, Grid Diary, 5-Minute Journal, Dabble Me for journaling, Dailyo for non-writers. Any experience that people would like to share?
I've never heard of any of those.
I'm old school.
but I would try. If anybody has a suggestion.
I heard Dalio is good. I know somebody who used it and they said it was really helpful.
Dalio.
Problem is we spend too much time on our screens as it is.
What she said.
Fair enough. So
Can I add something about improv?
I have a book. When the pandemic started, I started journaling, and it was like every day. I was how many weeks it's been, and at some point I gave it up. But yeah, I was writing out what I was doing, and it was great. But then I just stopped for whatever reason. I got bored with it.
Hey, Herb, we'll come back to your point in 1 second. I just want to do a quick time check. We are close to the end of our 90 minutes. There was talk in our group before we joined that maybe this would not go a full 90, and here we are yapping along. Ladies, Sharon and Heather, if you're okay to stick around for another few minutes and let folks get any more off their chest. And if anybody has to leave, feel free to drop off. But I'm happy to stick around a little bit longer if you guys are.
I'd like to hear what Kevin was wanting to say.
Yeah, with regards to telling your story, Mark, I actually had a chance to work with Robin Williams' wife on that movie, Robin's Wish.
Wow.
And what was really interesting was the whole reason that story came about was because the public and even the family actually turned against the widow and saying that you were responsible for your husband's death. And she said, he had this disease that nobody understood. And so it was really important. We were in a room filming each other, talking about what it's like to lose your mind. And the tears were just pouring out, And I finally said to her, but they were filming us with the cameras on. I said, you must tell this story. You've got to get this documentary out. So I tell everyone with a neurologic brain disease to please watch that movie. I think it's so important.
I remember seeing your name in the credits, Kevin, so it's nice to meet you.
Thank you. It's nice to be part of this too. What a great group of people you all are.
I agree.
Say Parkinson's people are the nicest people, and I believe it's 100% true.
I tell myself that all the time.
It's a special group of people.
All right. Any other questions? Let's see if we've missed any, Sue. They're all in the chat and viewable by all of you, but oh yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Kathy, who's on with us here now, she's on mute, but there, give a wave. Thank you, Kathy. She's our PD. She's the director of programming at PD Active, and she says PD Active has a PD salon group that shares their artwork, and some people write poems, present short skits, and all different kinds of ways of expressing themselves, thoughts and feelings. So yeah, that's a great resource, Kathy. Thanks for chucking that out there. If you haven't tried that, I haven't tried it myself yet either, but after a conversation like this, I'm down for trying it. So
I wanted to say Herb's was really cool. His improv was very memorable, and I know Herb wants to talk about improv, so I'd love to hear what Herb has to say.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I started that group in 2008, I think, or 2009. But anyway, that was a long time ago. But I just wanted to say that being in flow is the best part of my life. And now that I've turned to dance as my, like I used to be an improvising musician, and then I did acting, and then I did dance, and with dance you can dance as much as you want, really, and you get a good workout, and you get to learn how to go in and out of flow. The musicians find it very confusing sometimes to find that place. We used to call it the zone, and it was very mysterious. But now that I spend the whole day pretty much in the moment, it's easy to switch right into that flow. So it's very helpful for coping with all the wonderful intricacies of Parkinson's.
Right, and Herb, if I'm remembering correctly, Herb, pre-pandemic, you were a pretty good dancer with the drum group, right?
Oh, the
Didn't I see you out there dancing away at one of our events?
No, that's not me.
Oh, okay.
I worked with Claudine and her performances.
Got it.
Dance.
Yeah, Heather?
Well, now you have someone to blame everything on. You'd be like, it's my doppelganger, it's not me. But what I wanted to say about composing music and ask you, back at you, Irish wristwatch, by the way, that's our latest warm-up, Irish wristwatch. Everyone has to say that 5 times fast. Irish wristwatch. Okay, I'll stop. But what I wanted to ask you about with composing music, why don't you compose music anymore? And can you do it opposite, kind of like Morrissey did? Like, can you do the lyrics first and drop some tunes in and maybe just switch it up? Is it a different part of your brain, maybe?
It was my whole life, and I felt like it was every moment I could put into it, I put into it. And the problem was, it's like playing bass. I was also a bass player, and I was really good at it.
I knew it.
If you're too good at it, then it's not satisfactory to experience. Now, see, what I realize is I love creativity, and it helps me. Creativity is what helps me, not playing the bass. So if I play a new instrument, like I sing and play drums now, those weren't things I did before, but I can get
adaptation.
And there's no bias in my mind about, oh, you're not doing it right, you know. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Drummers for PD unite.
I see your drum kit back there. It looks awesome.
All right.
I want to come over and play.
Anytime.
Don't touch my drum set.
No, I'm not that.
Sorry, that's a line from Step Brothers.
I'm trying to pour through the notes here. Sue, have we missed anybody's questions?
Oh yeah, I see him.
I don't think so. I think we've handled them, or they've handled them.
Yeah. Diana says printing in block letters helps me, can no longer write. Yeah, that's.
Can you tell us one more time how to find that PD salon for the PD Active salon?
Sure thing. Kathy, are you still online? Do you want to mention that, or Adam, you're here with us? I'm sure it's in our calendar on the site, but
I'm the host.
Herb, there you go. Right, chime in.
Herb@herbhines.com is the easiest way to get to me.
Okay.
Sorry, I just put the link in the chat for our support groups, and so you can find our PD salon there. And also we'll be posting this recording. Kai had to leave early, so our recording will be on the YouTube channel for everybody, or our past events page as well. So if anybody needs help, I'm the program director at pdactive.org. So let me know.
And there's Herb's email. All right. Well, it feels like we're slowing down a little bit, which is what we do.
May I
do.
Share another quote before we go?
Where's Herb's email? Sorry, I don't see it. I was gonna say, is it for everybody?
You know what? I was in one person chatting only with one person. Let me put it up here again.
Okay.
Herb Hines.
Herb Hines, like ketchup.
There it is. Great. Yes, please send us off into PD land with a quote, Heather.
Well, there are a couple quotes really quickly. The first one is from Selma Blair, who put MS in the front of the camera instead of fading away, where she came out in her flowy, dramatic, multicolored Ralph and Rousseau gown and cape. And she stood there and she said, and forgive my French, holy bleep, there's a need for honesty about being disabled from someone recognizable. For the love of God, we're all recognizable. You can put yourself out there however you choose, but there is a need, because disability needs visibility, which is the last thing I just want to leave you with this book. It's really important that you use your voice whenever possible. And I have another thing that I just want to say. It will teach you so much compassion too by using your voice, because what happens when you share your story, as Sharon can attest, we send our message in the bottle out into the ocean. And what comes back? 100 million bottles, because everyone's suffering. So by telling your story, you might actually be helping somebody without even trying. It's not like that was your purpose. It's just a matter of knowing that it will come back. And then you won't be so alone. Everyone's together. So that's the beauty of using your voice.
Sharon.
I had an epiphany. I was posting my blog only to my Twitchy Woman Facebook page. And one day I posted it to my personal Facebook page. And I was writing this blog and I'm still not coming public, right? And I posted it to the wrong page and the world didn't fall down around me. And people said, oh, I really like what you write. And they signed up. So you never know. And it was an eye opener.
That's
So
one
thank you, everybody.
Good takeaway message. And the other is to start telling your story somehow, some way, sooner the better. Don't hide it. All right.
Yeah.
Herb, parting shot? Nope. Oh, he's saying bye-bye. All right, folks, let's give a big thank you to Heather and Sharon. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, ladies.
Oh, thank you.
We really appreciate it. We really admire you for finding and sharing your voices with us. And so thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Talk to you soon. Ciao.
Thank you.